It's 7 o'clock, Mayor.
Okay. All right. Call the meeting to order. If everyone would please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and then remain standing. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
In lieu of the blessing tonight, would you just want to do a moment of silence in recognition of the COVID victims to align with the governor's half-staff?
What Liz just said, everyone, just for a minute. Okay, y'all, you can be seated.
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioner Donnie Carter.
Here.
Commissioner Nina Forsythe.
Here.
Commissioner Kevin Grove.
Here.
Mayor Robert Flanagan.
Here.
Let the record reflect that 4 are present and Commissioner Adam Ritchie is absent this evening.
Okay. Need a motion and a second to approve the agenda for this evening.
I move that we approve the agenda for this evening.
Second.
Moving and second, all in favor?
Aye.
And also for the minutes from our past meetings.
Make a motion that we approve the minutes.
Second.
Moving and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Special presentations and requests. Don't have anything there. Mayor and Commissioners reports and announcements.
This one's you.
What's that?
Can you do this one?
Oh, the open house?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, basically, we're going to have the building here open for the general public to come, and we'll be giving some tours, and so everyone can see what has transpired here at 37 Broadway. So that will be coming up. What's the date on that?
Thursday the 30th.
Thursday the 30th. So the general public is welcome to attend. Nina, you want to talk about your
Yes.
Expo?
In coordination with National Drive Electric Week, the city is going, well, it's not an officially sponsored city event, but there will be an electric vehicle expo at City Place on September 25th from 9 to noon. There will be a showcase of vehicles from 9 to 10 and also from 11 to 12. Different kinds of vehicles. Our police EV will be there.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, and people can, and the owners of the different vehicles will be there, so the general public can look at the cars, look under the hood, talk to the owners about their experiences with vehicles, and then in the middle part from 10 to 11, there will be some short presentations by Potomac Edison. A Tesla driver who commutes to DC is going to be talking about his experience doing that. And then some information about new things coming down the pike with electric vehicles. And then a question and answer part where people can ask whatever's on their mind and get the skinny on electric vehicles. There's also going to be electric bikes there and some other electric implements of destruction like chainsaws and lawnmowers and stuff like that, because that is kind of the way things are going.
Very interesting. Very good. All right. And finally, we need a motion second to approve the reports from our various city departments.
Make a motion, we approve the monthly reports of the city departments.
Second. Moving second, all in favor?
Aye.
And then that takes us to public hearings.
Thank you, Mayor. The first public hearing tonight is for Charter Amendment number 53. This was advertised in the Cumberland Times News on August 26th, which would have been 21 days in advance of tonight. Before I talk about the Charter Amendment process, this pertains to changing your election to a vote-by-mail format of election. I wanted to talk about the process in which ballots are tabulated. In 2020, you elected to, rather than change your election date in response to the pandemic, you elected to change the format of your election to a vote by mail. The election board, who consisted of 3 community members and includes Kitty Davis, who worked for the County Board of Elections for her entire career and is very respected, is a great resource for me during that process, as that was the first election that I had been through as city administrator. So after you made the decision to do a vote-by-mail election, the election board and I worked closely together to develop that, and we sent it to a third-party printer. Every registered voter in the city, the registered voter list comes from Allegheny County Election Board. So they are auditing that continuously, and they maintain that election list. We also have a small supplemental list in which residents that wish to register to vote in Frostburg but not elsewhere can register to vote in Frostburg, but that is a very small list. So anyway, we had a third-party mailing company prepare the ballot envelopes that had an outer envelope with the mailing address of the registered voter, and then it had an inner envelope, which was the return envelope, and then it had the third envelope, which was the oath of voter envelope, and then the ballot was included in that. So when someone votes, they have to fill out the oath of voter, part of the envelope, for it to be counted as a valid ballot when we received it. That oath of voter envelope goes inside of another envelope, which got returned to the city. Or it got put in a Dropbox, whether it was mailed or put in a Dropbox. So after Election Day, the Board of Elections and staff opened all of the outer envelopes. That was the first part of the process. From there, because we were in a hurry, we didn't really think about a unique ID, like a numerical ID or a barcode, like what the County Board of Elections uses for your state, federal elections. So we just had the oath of voter with the name. So we went and alphabetized all of the voters just based on that oath of voter. Once we had those all alphabetized, members of the election board in a 2-person process read off the name and checked it off on the big, thick stack of all of the registered voters within the city. From there, after, there was no incidents in all of that process where, there was 2 ballots for 1 name. We got through all of that. In retrospect, having a unique ID number would be much easier to put them in numerical order than having to alphabetize everything and go through it that way. But that is just process that can be changed by the election board. So after all of the each voter had been checked off, then there's a process which those oath of voter envelopes were opened, and the ballot is put face down and the envelope is set to the side. We did this in batches of 50, and then the ballots were counted and made sure you had 50 votes for each batch of 50 envelopes you had opened. And then from there, the ballots are tallied. So there is, I just wanted to make everyone aware that there is a way that we reconcile the registered voter to the ballot, and that there aren't, we know who voted. So after all of the election is over, we actually take that voter list where we had check-marked every person whose vote we see, and that the county inputs in that person's voter record. So even if the voter only votes in Frostburg elections, they remain a registered voter in the state, federal, county elections as well. So I'd be happy to answer any additional questions on the process, but I wanted to talk then about what's before you tonight. Your election law is located 2 places. It's located within the charter of the city, and it's also located in the city code. Both address different aspects of it. The process for adopting a charter is a public hearing, your vote on a charter amendment resolution, and then there is 40 days in which it could be petitioned a referendum. If it is not petitioned to referendum within those 40 days, it goes into effect 10 days thereafter. The ordinance, which will be also introduced later tonight, is like any other ordinance that you pass. It will be introduced tonight on first reading, and then a public hearing will be set for the October council meeting on second reading, and at that meeting, you could vote, and it would take effect 20 days thereafter. Charter Amendment Resolution 53 repeals and reenacts two sections of the city code, or city charter, section 605, 606. 605 is to read, in order to be counted, all election ballots shall be, 1, placed in a secure delivery box at the Frostburg Municipal Center, 37 Broadway, between the hours of 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. on the date of the election, or 2, mailed to the city at P.O. Box 440, Frostburg, Maryland, provided that they are postmarked no later than the date of the election and received no later than 10 a.m. on the 10th day following the date of election. And section 606 would read, the board shall determine the number of votes cast for each candidate or question and shall certify the results of the election to the city administrator on the 10th day following the date of an election, no sooner than 11 a.m. and no later than 11:59 p.m. Thereafter, the city administrator shall notify the candidates who have been elected and record the results in the minutes of the council at the next regular meeting. At this time, I would ask members of the public wishing to offer comment to come to the podium and state their name and address for the public record.
Lisa Van Houten, 318 Bernard. While I don't mind too many of these changes, I do have some facts to bring forward to you. One is, has anybody talked to the Postmaster General or a union representative of the post office? As they have told me, there's a 2-week delay. I could mail a letter across the street and it has to go all the way to Baltimore to be sorted. That takes 10 days, and to come back is another 4 or 5. All right, and we all know Baltimore's sorting center is in disarray. So when we talk about mailing a ballot, I'm out of town, I take my ballot with me, and I throw it in some other city's mailbox. It's going to take 2 to 4 weeks to get here. I'll give you an example. We all sent Christmas cards or holiday cards last December. It took 2 weeks to go from here to California. It took 2.5 weeks to go to New York City. And some of my cousins didn't get one until March. So the mail service is really in disarray. And to say that you can get all your ballots within 10 days is not so good. I'll give you another example. I get a weekly magazine, Chemical and Engineering News. I'm supposed to get it weekly. The latest edition I have, and I understand it's periodicals and are processed differently. The last one I got was August 30th. So that just proves that the system of the United Postal Service is kind of not up to speed. Finally, I'll present to you Delivering for America. I don't know if anybody downloaded the 80-page document from the U.S. Postal Service of what Chairman DeVos has devised, but basically, Cumberland Sorting Center is shut down. Now all your mail has to go to Baltimore to be sorted. So there's a big delay in how pre-sorted first-class mail is going to get through during this election cycle. So I would have to say, you know, your Dropbox is great, but your timestamp is important in the mail. How are we going to resolve this timestamp differentiation when it takes 2 to 4 months to get that election ballot associated and counted in realistic time. That's all I'm asking.
I think we've got to set a date. I mean, there's got to be
I
a
know.
cutoff date. But the other option is everybody has the opportunity to drop it off in the mailbox, or not the mailbox, the Dropbox that'll be here. I mean, nobody in town.
There's no
has-
timestamp on that.
Well, there's no timestamp, but we're going to know that it's here before the cutoff for that's going to be the date of the election. So there doesn't have to be a timestamp.
So,
on that.
so why not put one also at the post office?
Well, the thing is, Lisa, there's not one person in town that lives more than 1 mile from the front door of this. I mean, what's the difference, post office or?
Because a lot of us actually travel for work,
Uh-huh.
you know, so it's not an easy thing. If you're in a senior center, who picks up your ballot? You know, and throws it in the mailbox rather than throws it in a Dropbox. You can't verify any of that. Okay, so I'm trying to, you know, simply say, you know, mail-in balloting is not the only way to go. Drop boxes, I agree, are a very good thing, but if you're traveling, like I do, you know, and say, okay, I'm going to bring all my mail with me, pay my bills on the road, you know, and drop it off in Pittsburgh, and it might take 2 to 4 weeks to get here, my vote doesn't count. I mean, it's small, I understand that, but it's something you need to take into consideration.
Well, the solution seems to be then to not get an election result until 2 to 4 months until after the election, which seems to be
Kind of
unreasonable.
sucks. Yeah, I agree. So I'm like, how do you resolve these two differences, you know, when you know,
Maybe make people aware that there may be delays in the mail and that their best choice is if they're going to be traveling to drop off their ballot before they travel. There doesn't seem to be a perfect solution.
I agree.
I was under the impression though that if you mailed something from Frostburg to another Frostburg address that didn't go to Baltimore.
No,
Is that true?
everything goes.
Everything, okay.
Everything goes to Baltimore, and that's
It's gotten a lot better since the holidays.
Yeah.
I mean, I was actually, because I was actually hand delivering checks to some of our vendors here in town up until about 3-4 months ago. And then I just decided, okay, I'm going to set a date and then check with them and see. And they've been averaging about 4 to 5 days. They've been receiving.
That's been my experience too, that the
Mhm.
mail has kind of returned back to
Yeah.
the normal.
But it's, you know, God forbid the union should go on strike, you know, during that time. What are you going to do? What are we going to do?
We'll have to then go, you know, implement emergency measures just like we did during the pandemic. You can't take, I mean, what if the Dropbox burns down because, you know, you can't account for everything.
I know.
But if
I
there
know.
is like something unforeseen, we have to pivot. You know, that's just the way it
But
goes.
what's the plan for the pivot?
It all
you
depends
know,
on the emergency.
yeah.
Is there going to be a gas leak? Is there going to be a hailstorm? You know, we
Mhm.
don't know what.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we didn't know there was going to be a pandemic, but we did adjust.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can't plan for every I mean,
Contingency.
if
I
it's
understand
unforeseen,
that.
that's the
But I just
definition.
want to make sure everybody's vote is counted, even if it's
Absolutely.
2 months later.
Well, if you can't announce election results for 2 months,
It-
then you really that delays. That means we get to be
Right.
council for 2 more months. You know, and that's going to be people are going to be up in arms that they're just trying to stay on council without
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't seem like that would go down well with the public.
Okay, but as long as there's a follow-up that says, oh, by the way, 50 more, 100 more votes came through seriously late, but I'm more concerned about just a mail-in ballot in saying, okay, where's your mail-in going? And how...
But again,
if you're a person who is really concerned about that, then I would drop it off here
I
at the
understand that.
drop-off. I mean, if that was my big concern in
If you're
like,
90 years old and can't get here, it makes a big difference. You know, if you don't have a vehicle and you can't walk. I'm just thinking about the contingencies of
So
the
during the
inability.
pandemic, when we did the mail-in ballots, how many of them came in?
Very few. Very few. It was, we counted the votes the day after the election. And I think it was 7 days until, now it was uncontested. So like there was no need to, it wasn't hotly contested.
That was 2 years ago, though.
It was,
Yeah. Things
But-
have changed since then.
I'd say from the day after the election until 7 or 10 days after, there might have been 24 ballots that came in. It was a small amount.
That came in within the 10 days?
Yeah,
or-
yeah, within that
but
window.
Did any come in after 10 days?
No. The only one that came in afterwards were like return to senders or ones that got lost in the postal system.
And there's going to be a whole lot more since Mr. DeVos has changed the entire
Enjoy.
postal system.
No, well, that actually happened during the 2020, that he was in charge during the 2020 election.
yeah, our mail's been going to Baltimore for years. I mean, Cumberland didn't just shut down recently. It's been a few years since they shut down their sorting facility.
I was told 6 months ago, but okay,
No, it's been going to Baltimore for a long time.
okay.
I mean, Adam's been on the council with us now, 3 years, and that's who he works for. So we kind of get the inside scoop from him.
Yeah.
Al Jess?
Stick one up.
I don't recall, but I'm curious to know how far ahead of the election deadline the ballots are mailed.
In 2020, there was no deadline other than what we were following the state guidance, which they were pivoting to and doing the mail-in primary. And I think the state guidance was that they were mailed at least 2 weeks prior to the election. I think ours went in the mail 17 or 18 days prior to the election. And the ordinance that will be introduced shortly, it specifies that they must be mailed between 35 and 25 days prior to the election.
That sounds like ample time, even if there is a backup in the postal service,
If
to
you
me.
if you completed it right away, which, the trend we saw was most ballots came in right away, and then they trickled off.
Anyone else?
Rob Forsythe, 53 Centennial. I would like to say I really like the idea of allowing mail-in voting. I think Lisa's concern is a real one. I think in response to something you said, Kevin, people aren't really concerned until they find out that it didn't work. So you won't find, I don't think there will be many people who hold off from mailing in their ballots to put it in a Dropbox because they don't trust the postal system. There will be some, but people won't know. In fact, people won't know that they've been burned unless somebody tells them after the election too. Your ballot came in late. So it's sticky. Perhaps I think something that would help a lot would be some sort of warning that, to the effect that the safest way to get your vote, the surest way to get your vote counted would be to put it in a Dropbox and try to make the mail-in sound like an option that
It should be used sooner rather than later.
should be used sooner rather than later and maybe considered before being used. I don't know. I don't see any solution. Those are just some ideas I had. I had another one too, but I don't think this would get into an ordinance. You could mail yourselves some letters about the time of the election and see how long it takes them to get you, and get back to you.
Would it be appropriate to put a warning type letter in with these ballots to say, you know, sometimes the mail is slow, this should be the way that you do it?
It could be included in part of the voter instructions.
Cool. All right. That's all I have to say.
Okay, Ron, thank you.
I'm in favor of that.
Hi, I'm Mary Ann Lutz, 76 Locust Street. And first of all, I have a question. I just want to clarify, how many days will the Dropbox be available to people?
So the way this is proposed is that it would only be available on election day.
Is there a reason it's limited to that one day?
No.
Because I'm thinking if it were like the election we just went through in 2020, and people had, I don't know what would be a legitimate or reasonable amount of time, at least a week, maybe 2 weeks to drop it off, then that would seem to forestall a lot of the problems that might creep in. Because, you know, if you're someone who has to go out of town, well, you know, that gives you maybe a 2-week period in which you can get your ballot in. Just a thought, maybe if we extended the window for that.
I can change that right now if you'd
Well,
like me to.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I don't know what the logistics would be or whether there'd be a problem with
We're
people
open 8 to 4
collecting.
here.
Huh?
We're open Monday through Friday, 8 to 4, unless it's a holiday.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And I just wanted to say that I do support, in general, you know, if you can work out the logistics of it, the proposal that you have here. I just want to express, you know, from a voter standpoint,
Sure.
I very much appreciated that we did mail-in ballots. I was very concerned, as you can tell by my masking, about COVID and about the dangers of being in public places with a lot of people. And so for one thing, you know, the mail-in ballots allowed all of us that measure of safety. And hopefully this Delta variant and all the rest of it is going to get contained, but who knows? It was also very convenient. It was very clear what I had to do. I didn't feel confused by any part of it. And I just thought the whole process worked very, very well on the local level, certainly. And so, like I say, I support, you know, this idea in general. I think for a lot of citizens of the city, it's really, really helpful. And it forestalls the possibility, or, you know, kind of anticipates the possibility that there could be a problem around election time. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
May I ask a question briefly? The Dropbox, if it would be available prior to the election, do you want it to be outside and secure? They make those, they're expensive. Or inside and secure? And if they're inside and secure, do you want them in the police lobby that's available 24/7 or in this lobby that's 8 to 4?
Kevin?
Yeah, I would think in the police lobby, that gives somebody 24 hours a day that they could drop it off.
Okay.
Thank you, Kevin.
Quick question, why are we eliminating absentee ballots?
Because everyone is being mailed a ballot.
Okay. Okay, I wasn't quite sure.
There'll be no reason for it.
Like I said, some of us travel for a living.
Anyone else? Hayden, take it away.
I'm Hayden Lindsay, Director of Public Works for the City of Frostburg. This is just a quick CSO update for the city's combined sewer overflow separation project. This past month, the Phase 9A project has pretty much come to a complete conclusion. Inspections are done. and Braddock Construction is still under written obligation to come back and do a little bit of paving warranty work. Phase 9B, which is what's going on right now, is moving along very well. We're still way ahead of schedule, hoping to finish way ahead of schedule. They've been working on the water line on Maple Street and some of the valving that will branch out into the next phase from there. We will be chlorinating and pressure testing that line this weekend. As soon as the pressure testing is done, we'll be chlorinating it. And then curbing and sidewalks will start next week. Finally, Phase 9C, which is upcoming, which will be the next phase of work, is looking to start in the spring. That's the long and the short of it. Are there any questions?
Where is 9B?
9B is actually, if you head that way, it's the Maple Street, Stoyer Street, fairly close to the college campus. If you start at 7-Eleven and walk back, you'll kind of hit all of it. It's in there.
And 9C?
9C will be also fairly close to the campus. A little bit will be on Bell Street. That would be the closest way to orient yourself. We're actually calling it the Bell Street corridor. So,
Okay, thank you, Hayden. Appreciate it. All right, back to old business. Need to approve resolution 2021-40. That's on the used loader purchase. No, missed the.
Turn your paper over. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
The other one. I questioned my decision to do that.
Yeah, that's all right. Okay. All
Sorry.
right, charter amendment resolution number 53.
Thank you, Mayor. The amended, subject to this charter amendment number 53 was subject to the public hearing earlier this evening. Based on your discussions, section 605 has been amended to read, placed in a secure delivery box at the Frostburg Municipal Center, 37 Broadway, from 8 a.m. on 14 days, from 8 a.m. 14 days prior to the election to 7 p.m. on the date of the election, or mailed. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, I'd ask for a motion and a second to approve Charter Amendment Resolution number 53.
I move we approve Charter Amendment 53.
Second.
Moved and seconded. We already did public comments, so all in favor? Aye.
Okay. Let me get back to the agenda. Next up is the referenced ordinance that also pertains to election law. This ordinance, you were provided with the strike-through version at your work session, but what this ordinance does is it updates certain provisions of the city code to better suit the mail-in election. For example, the notice of elections, that does remain the same, but the candidate filing times are moved up to 50 days before the date of the election, and it specifies when ballots are mailed between 35 and 25 days. It also moves up the write-in candidate to 25 days prior to the election, so that write-in candidates at least would have filed by the time most people are getting their ballots, so that they have an opportunity to be voted for. If we had left that where it was, a lot of people could have in theory returned their ballots and write-in candidates could still be filing, which didn't seem appropriate. It also specifies how the ballots would be tallied, and knowing that it would be, we'd be receiving some by mail, it's likely that the Board of Elections would want to tally at more than one time, and so it specifies that the city administrator would cause public notice to be posted of when the ballot counting would be happening, so that vote watchers could attend. It also just talks about when they have to be registered to vote. If there's any questions on this, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, I would ask for a motion and a second to approve on first reading, set the October 21st council meeting as an advertised public hearing, and then public comment. Thank you.
Make a motion to approve ordinance 2021-04 on first reading.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Any public comment?
This was not excuse me, this was not included in the latest public advertisement, so I'd like to postpone this vote until it is publicly available in the paper as well as in your emailing.
As I explained earlier, the ordinance process that is introduced tonight, there is an advertised public hearing for comment at the October meeting. Based on that public comment, the mayor and council could choose to amend the ordinance and have and adopt it on a third reading at the November meeting.
Okay, so you're talking 60 days at least.
If there's no substantial changes or there's no amendments made at the October public meeting, they could vote on it that night.
Okay.
But if public hearing comments, they decide that there needs to be changes made, that change would result in the ordinance being deferred to the November
I've had no chance
meeting.
to look at the process, much less anybody else. But, okay.
Yes, this will be in the paper, just like every other ordinance, and the public hearing will be held in October.
All right.
Anyone else? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we had 2 members of the Board of Elections resign, and 2 members of the community have expressed interest in serving on the Board of Election, Miss Mary Ann Lutz, that's joining us this evening, and Miss Dawn Howe. They would serve 3-year terms set to expire in 2024. If you have other suggestions or any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, I'd ask for a motion and a second to approve Resolution 2021-36.
I'll make a motion we adopt resolution 2021-36.
Second?
Any public comment? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
And I'm very grateful for those who have offered to
Yes.
serve.
Thank you very much.
Very civic-minded of you.
Good evening. The Community Development Office is also very grateful for the many people who serve on our boards and commissions, and they serve our city with distinction and excellent experience. The Historic District Commission alternate, Mr. Daniel Filer's term expires September 19th. He has indicated that he is willing to serve another 3-year term. Mr. Filer also has represented the city of Frostburg with distinction and expertise as a Historic District Commissioner, and his service to our community has been invaluable to the preservation of our precious resources in Frostburg's Historic District. Staff recommends that Mr. Filer be reappointed to a new 3-year term. We feel that he brings a demonstrated interest and a strong background in historic preservation to our city, and his academic and professional training lends a specific expertise to the commission. The mayor and council have the authority to appoint individuals of their choice to the board, and unless there are any questions or concerns, I would ask you respectfully for a motion and a second on Resolution 2021-037.
Make a motion to approve resolution 2021-37.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any public comment? Hearing none, all in favor?
Thank you kindly.
Thank you, MJ.
Resolution 2021-38 is at the request of Frostburg First for 2 events this fall to waive the open container or repeal the open container law in Frostburg. This would be for the Arts Walk on the 9th of October and Moonlight Madness, which is on the evening of September 24th. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, or the chief would. Otherwise, I'd ask for a motion and a second on 2021-38.
I make a motion, we adopt resolution 2021-38.
Second?
Moving and seconded. Any public comment? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
As discussed in your work session, the city has a real estate tax set-aside, or RETSA, agreement with Sand Spring 2 subdivision. And in December, there is a formula in that agreement that assigns a base value to each of those lots. And in December, they amended the subdivision, which ended up resulting in an additional lot and some lot acreage changes. The developers have requested that the RETSA agreement be updated to reflect that, in addition to including a lot that was previously set aside from the first phase of the subdivision as a stormwater management facility that is now being able to be developed. The city attorney has not yet provided the agreement to me, but it just needs to be text changes referencing a new updated subdivision plat, as well as updating this exhibit within there. But this is the exhibit and the new base values. The total amount at the bottom remains the same. If there's any questions, again, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, I'd ask for a motion and a second to approve Resolution 2021-39 as prepared by the city attorney, or the agreement would be as prepared by the city attorney.
Make a motion to approve resolution 2021-39.
Second?
Okay, moving and seconded. Any public comment? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, Hayden, I didn't mean to steal your thunder. It's all yours.
Resolution 2021-40, to authorize the purchase of a used wheel loader for the Frostburg Street Department in the amount not to exceed $70,000. Right now, we're getting by with a used wheel loader that the county is loaning us at the moment. What we use it for is salt loading into trucks and any other general uses around the city. The one we have now, it's a loaner, and we are grateful for it. However, it is very undersized, and we will need our own eventually. I would ask for a motion and a second for Resolution 2021-40 for a used wheel loader, $70,000 or less.
I move we approve resolution 2021-40.
Second.
Moving and seconded. Any public comment? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
There you go, Adam.
He's probably pretty sad he didn't get to make
Yeah, I
that
know.
motion.
We've only talked about this for how long? Chief?
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners, thank you.
Good evening.
The next resolution on your agenda is Resolution 2021-41 to approve the School Resource Officer Memorandum of Understanding between the city and the Allegheny County Board of Education. As you recall from the work session, we discussed some of the contents of the MOU. Ms. Dahlman and I have made the minor adjustments we discussed at that session. The program as a whole has been extraordinarily positive. It's created a very good relationship between the city and police department and the school system. I think it's prevented a lot of problems, and it's really formed excellent relationships with the students and parents. We teach DARE. We have somebody at the school every day as a resource. So it's been a great program. I know I discussed it a bit at the work session, so I would be glad to elaborate further or answer any questions. Otherwise, I would respectfully request a motion and a second to pass Resolution 2021-41, which would authorize the Mayor, Commissioner Grove, and myself to sign the agreement.
I'll make a motion, we adopt resolution 2021-41.
Second. Moved and seconded. Any public comment? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
There you go, Chief. We'll sign those documents for you.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
As we've discussed, any of the projects or programs that you elect to implement with the American Rescue Plan funds will be approved by a resolution, as well as follow any of the city's procurement policies. At work session, we presented 2 projects. After further consideration of the day camp building, we think it might be in our best interest, because of the nature of just a metal shell building, to do a design bid type of procurement and do it all at once. So we'll be coming to you with more information at a later date. So this would just authorize Hayden to proceed with bidding out the HVAC system upgrades at the water treatment plant, which the main purpose of that is to control humidity and protect the components of the plant. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, I'd ask for a motion and a second on Resolution 2021-42.
I move we approve Resolution 2021-42.
Second.
Moving to second. Any public comment? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
And it's high time.
All right, Chief.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. Again, I have the report for you for the month of August 2021 for the Police Department. We had 994 incidents compared to 678 in August of 2020. As always, a diverse array of activities, 9 arrests, quite a few well-being checks, requests for police officers, and disturbances, those sorts of things. Glad to see a lot of our positive events coming back, and I am trying to keep my report just a little brief tonight. But, we've had the cruise, the block party, we had our electric car at both, so that was really neat. And just glad to see a lot of good positive things happening again in the community. That would conclude my report. Always glad to elaborate further.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate
Thank you,
it.
sir.
All right, open public comment. Citizens wishing to speak to the mayor and council should come to the podium, state their name and address for the official record.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Tanya Bucci. My address is 222 McCullough Street in Frostburg, and I would like to address the City Council regarding a business in town, the Wholesome Harvest Co-op. The Wholesome Harvest Co-op has been operating without a business license since October of 2020. This past spring, Nancy Ganta and Joe Accord, who are on the board, have been notified, as well as other member owners of the WOC having this problem. In April 2021, through a request I made through the Maryland Office of Attorney General, they were notified that they gave them 14 days to resolve this issue. It has not been resolved to date, but the main part of me contacting the Maryland Attorney General is in January of 2021, I was contacted by 2 of their vendor accounts for collections. I am not permitted in that store. I've done nothing to warrant that. I was one of the founding members. It is a member-owned co-op, and I was forced out after asking questions about the finances, the lack of transparency, the lack of board meetings, which were all in violation of the bylaws. And to date, I've not received this. I've been in contact with the Maryland Attorney General. They've sent numerous letters to them demanding that they provide this letter to me stating that I'm off all accounts and have no responsibility or connection to said business. And also, with respect to them not being an actual business, they are actually forfeited in the state of Maryland, and they are not in good standing for failure to pay taxes according to their personal property filings. And not in good standing means that the business entity is not in compliance with one or more Maryland laws that applies to businesses and their responsibilities in this state. Forfeited, according to the Maryland SDAT, the State Department of Assessment and Taxation, means that the right of the entity to conduct business in the state of Maryland has been relinquished, and it has no right to use its name for domestic corporations, as the co-op is. This also means that the business has no existence under the laws of the state of Maryland. So many of you know that they have filed false police reports for me walking down the city street in 2019 because I went to the farmer's market and then went to City Hall to pay my utility bill. And they stated I was there an hour and a half after I'd walked down the street when I had proof through the fact that I work remotely that I was actually at my things. This warrants the level of harassment. I've actually taken them to court already in 2020, but the fact that I am still on the accounts and they are refusing to provide a letter is a major concern, and the fact that this business is actually forfeited in the state of Maryland.
What does this have to do with the city council?
There's a business in town that actually doesn't have a license, but they're still operating. So I was just making you aware of that. I mean, wouldn't that, if they're not licensed and they're not recognized in the state of Maryland?
That's between them and the state of Maryland. We don't license businesses, from what I understand. I mean, to an extent. I mean, LJ, what?
You have to have a valid business license to open your business in the city, but beyond that, we do not have an enforcement mechanism.
Well, I'm assuming that once the grant's up at the end of the month, they'll be,
I've heard that's the case anyway. but they're-
yeah. Well, with them not providing a letter, and I'm in a situation where if I walk by, they're gonna call the police, but my name is allegedly, possibly still on accounts. This is a red flag where they're not even actually working with Maryland Office of Attorney General, and they're ignoring the request. They've actually provided them a libelous document in response, and actually, it gets even worse than that. But that's with SDAT, that there's also going to be an inquiry going on. The USDA has been contacted. I've been in contact with them since 2019, so they're aware of the situation. I just think with the fact that we do have a business in town that received a $469,000 grant from the USDA, and the fact that nothing is being done to kind of keep this business in town, and all the taxpayers' money is going to be relinquished after that, is kind of really sad. And the fact that I am a resident of this city until I'm not, because at this point I am actually going to be putting my house on the market and leaving. But I just wanted you to know.
Okay,
Thank you.
Anyone else?
The street department recently repaved part of Grandview Avenue. And I was wondering if Preston and Hilltop, which are in much worse condition than what Grandview is on the list for being repaved.
I will be in charge of that. As far as this year goes, no. Paving for this year is done. But come spring next year, we will be riding around and making a list of all streets that are worthy of being paved.
Mm-hmm.
And picking out which ones we're going to do. If they are as bad as you say, then they will be under consideration.
Okay, it's been deteriorating really badly. So, yeah, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
My name's Greg Thomas. I'm at 163 South Water Street. And on the subject of the co-op again, the co-op has had numerous health code violations since opening, including just 4 or so in the last couple of months. There's been numerous products and classes of products that have had to be removed from their shelves by the health department due to concerns about their being unsafe. Austin Parks, we've contacted at the Allegheny County Health Department. He's familiar with all the details and he's contacted them. I heard from someone today that they've started selling again one of the products that he had them pull from the shelves, which was unsafe. As Ms. Bucci mentioned, the co-op has violated its bylaws numerous times, and that's been brought to the attention of the Attorney General. They've consistently made slanderous and libelous comments regarding member owners who ask questions about the finances or about the USDA grant. We've received a copy of the USDA grant record for the co-op via Freedom of Information Act request, and it has, all the records of the money that they've received from the USDA that was supposed to build a co-op and support local farms, and would have obviously been a great thing for Frostburg. And they've not spent that money for that reason. It has not gone to help the farms and the people like myself who became member owners. This money we invested in the co-op was not spent for what should have been spent. I was told by the president of the co-op that they had 4 people in 2020, full-time employees working for the co-op. And anyone who's familiar with the co-op knows there's only one person who works in there, which is Becky Vasco. So they've had 4 people on the payroll full-time who don't work in the co-op and don't do anything. So, as it was mentioned, the grant ends on September 30. We're concerned that the co-op administration may close the co-op without notice and remove the inventory and equipment while leaving debts unpaid. According to some customers, this may have already started happening. They've removed shelves in the co-op that used to be filled with product, and so we're concerned they're going to be selling the refrigerators and any inventory that belongs to the member owners, and not just leaving with the $450,000 from the USDA, but the money from local people, member owners. So we think the police should be aware of this, that if a truck pulls up to the co-op and starts loading equipment, if they don't have the approval of the member owners, and they don't at this point, there's been no meeting to discuss what they're going to do with the inventory, assuming they go out of business on September 30 or thereabouts. I think it needs anyone removing products from the co-op, it needs to be interpreted as theft. The co-op's inventory doesn't belong to Nancy Giunta or Joe Accord. It belongs to the member owners. So we think that's how the police need to treat this.
Have you all talked to an attorney? Have you had a conversation? I mean, this is all a civil matter. This is not something the police are going to get involved in. If you haven't afforded yourself a conversation with an attorney, I would do it now.
We've talked to an attorney and the attorney general, who has 2 cases open. And regarding the police and the co-op, the last time I was at a meeting was actually in the old location, and it happened to be the date the police were moving to their temporary location. This new location is great. Anyway, the co-op had submitted nonsensical and false documents to the police and filed false reports, and those were used as a basis for some sort of stay-away order for Ms. Bucci and myself. And we have done nothing wrong, and we request that whatever that was, a stay-away order, whatever it was, be removed and our records be cleared immediately. There's nothing we've done that is wrong, and we shouldn't be threatened with arrest.
But again, this is a civil matter that we can't make this decision. This isn't a decision this has nothing to do with us. This is a civil matter between you and the co-op that needs to be handled through the court system.
Well, the police have contacted us and said we could be arrested, so doesn't that...
Because they were given a document from the court system.
No, they were not. There was no document from any court system. It was a letter stating that I couldn't be in there because I was a buyer and a treasurer at the same time and didn't address. I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's no legal document that they provided. They provided basically a comic strip to them.
Right. They have told people, we've been told by numerous people, that there were documents in the court system. That is, there's no truth to that whatsoever. There never was any truth, and that's the point.
Mr. Thomas, I have your email. Chief Costello will dig into the matter further and get back to you tomorrow in writing regarding the stay-away order.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
Yes, please.
Sure.
Community development staff would just like to clarify the issue about the use and occupancy permit. There are numerous requirements for a use and occupancy permit in our city, depending on the type of business that wants to open. There is no mechanism for a revocation of that permit. If a business license has expired, the permit would become null and void. That's the #1 requirement for a use and occupancy permit. Where food is involved, health department is always involved. And that's a county level action, and they have the authority to close a business down if there's a health violation. From our stance, I'll gladly research the business license issue with the county clerk's office and the business not in good standing with the State Department of Assessments and Taxation. I'll be happy to confer with our city administrator if there's further action required.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you. Everybody else good? Everybody have a good evening.